we got going on here? There's Schizophrenic. Enzo Bear, how's it going, guys? We are, give me a second here, I'm sitting back down. We are going to talk through a little bit of stuff that I don't think I've talked on in a couple of weeks. We'll talk about this stuff for a little bit, and then I'm going to try to send you guys over to Sending Grounds if he streams. I'm hoping he's streaming tonight. He's one of our guys in our Linux group, and he's pretty good. So if we can get him streaming, that would be awesome. And he used to stream pretty regularly when he had time, but it seems like he's got time again to maybe spend doing that a little bit. So we'll do that. But what I'm going to talk about tonight is for people who have been here, probably going to be somewhat familiar. For people that haven't been here, it's going to be hopefully something useful, right? This will be, it's kind of my talk. It meanders a little bit, but I do have some slides that kind of keep me on track. And it deals with like learning how you learn things, learning how you take things that you absorb around the world and get into your head, and how you use them as an engineer and how you use them in your everyday life. And it's titled Excelling in the Engineering Field After College. So I originally wrote this for my college students. That's how I came to have this presentation, but then I modified it for anyone, right? The purpose of this is to be able to say, move this over here like this so I can see it better. The purpose of this is to be able to say, hey, I want to get into tech, or I want to get into some field. I want to do any of these things around the discipline of engineering. How do I go about doing that, right? How do I get better at this stuff? How do I apply what I know, and do this stuff professionally? So that's the purpose of this talk. All right. And the random quote to get you interested comes from William Butler Yeats. Education is not the filling of the pail, but the lighting of a fire. You don't just fill up your head with knowledge one time and that's it. Like that's not how it works in any field that I know of, but for sure tech, because things are always moving, things are always changing. I tell you guys sometimes, like when I was on this NOAA project a few years back, I was in my late 30s. I was about 38, and I was the youngest guy on my team across the board, probably average about 15 years. If you averaged all our ages up, and then I'm pretty sure the average age was close to 55 on the team. And what I mean to say by that is there's things that change in tech, but there's things that stay the same. Like the POSIX style Unix and these things, like there's commands that have changed in there, but like you're going to have a lot of longevity spending your time learning Linux, I think. Learning Bash and the command line and those kind of things. And trust me, man, people have been saying that our sysadmin jobs and our systems engineering jobs are going away for the last I've been hearing it the whole time, even before I got into tech. Oh, those jobs are going away. Oh, those jobs are going away. But, yet still they are. They persist, right? It's like that thing, the horrors persist, but so do I. So anyways, we have to keep learning. The jobs are going to be there. Or empirically, we've seen that the jobs have not yet gone away, or the technology is not sufficient to make them go away yet. And we were even talking about this the other day. Everybody thought all this new, revolution in the last 5 years or so of AI doing all this stuff, but then we find that it's just confidently answering things wrong because it was programmed from people's wrong stuff, right? So like, I know they're tuning that down, but I'm just saying, like, don't believe the doom and gloom that there's not jobs out there, because there absolutely are. I look at jobs all day long for stuff with the college, and I'm just like, yeah, there's stuff out there. You just have to figure out how to convince people that you can do it. So anyways, to that point, there's a few things that we're going to talk about today. My main one is, where's the value in being an engineer? Like, why do companies want you to work for them and to fulfill a role of like engineer for that company, right? Well, as engineers, we deal in truth, and that truth, you can sit here and wax philosophical about there is no such thing as truth, and there's this and this and this. That stuff can go all sit outside for engineering, because there is truth. There's zeros and ones, and something either is a one or it is something else, and we can search for truth as engineers. And that's, in some ways, kind of like Sisyphus. Like, we know our purpose, so we're happy, right? Anyways, with engineers, our utility added, or our value, is directly related to what we know and how quickly we can get to a correct answer. So to that, there's kind of like two tasks. Sometimes we're called to implement technologies, and sometimes we're called to fix things and troubleshoot. Those are two common tasks for engineers. If you're applying a new technology, you're building something new for the first time. If you're fixing something, you're troubleshooting a step in the process or a part of the process and trying to figure out how that moves along, right? So in any case, knowledge and finding solutions are what we bring to the table. And to that point and to that understanding, our value add to a business, what we call the utility of having an engineer, that's up here, is if we know that that's what we bring, right? Knowing things and having the right answer. Our goal is to figure out how to keep ourselves ready to do that, right? Ready to be the person that the company calls on, that kind of stuff. All right, so anyways, here's our overview. Continuing education, learning how you learn, having certifications if you want to get certifications, if you want to study a body of knowledge that's known by other people. And that goes back to that idea of how do you know things? How can you say you know things? How can you say that you know that when you push a button, it's going to deploy an SQS service in AWS? How do you know? I mean, if you've done it before, I guess you've seen it happen. But if you've never done it before, maybe you trust that somebody who's trained you or showed you or the docs or something like that. Well, certifications are just that. They're studying the body of knowledge, the things that already exist, the people, unless you're just going in there and you're like, I'm going to figure out this AWS cloud by myself. I mean, I think that's foolish, but you could do it. You could just click around until you had a working lab. It would take a long time, but you could do it. So certifications are great because they train you around a body of knowledge that professionals have put together about a thing. I think that you should have a home lab. If you don't want to spend money on a home lab, there's all kinds of home lab alternatives that we have out there. There's all these different professional sites. Like you can go spend time on Kaggle, don't spend any money. You can go spend time on Killer Coded, don't spend any money. You can spend time, I'm pretty sure, on Hack the Box and Try Hack Me. Those two places, they've got like places for you to do things without setting up your own environment, which is in some ways awesome because some people just want to get their hands on the keyboard and start learning. I actually prefer teaching people that way. I don't want to sit you down for 6 hours and talk to you about the background of Linux before we get into just working on Linux, right? So there's that. I think you should get a book collection together, and then I think that you should definitely join some type of IT discussion group or listen to podcasts or blogs or open source. Hear how the people that are doing this now, the people that are working on these systems now talk. Because being able to talk the talk is a big part of getting into doing this stuff professionally, right? Either you learn that stuff when you're there and you pick it up quick, or you sit around and talk to people about how they do it. Real quick over here, Dinesh said, hi, currently I'm working in IT support, want to move into Linux admin or DevOps support roles. Can I help you? I want some real-time roles and responsibilities for 2 years plus experience. Please, in Linux admin domain, make a video one. Yeah, well, I would say this. I would say I can help with that. What I would advise you to do is, again, we're going to talk about it in this talk here, but just since you asked the question, I'll show you. What I would do is I would find, well, one, I would start doing Linux, right? Like I would make sure that I can do Linux and that I feel comfortable working in Linux. If I didn't know how to do Linux, I would start over in something like, where's this at? I would start in something like Killer Coda. And I would maybe just for a few weeks, and probably you've already done this, I'd go get into some Linux environments and make sure that I can do Linux. Because if I sit around and do Linux for like a few weeks and I can't stand it for more than 15 minutes, I probably don't want to be a Linux admin. Like if I go here, if I go here and listing files and directories and I start doing this and I go, this sucks, I hate it, I'll go back to my Windows terminal. Well, you tried. Not every Linux isn't for everybody, right? Doing this stuff command line isn't for everybody. So my point in saying that is this guy's going to walk you through a bunch of stuff, show you things about commands and things that you can do. He's going to tell you how to run, like just type in ls and see what's in there. There's a bunch of files and a couple directories, but I don't know that yet. So maybe I use ls-l and I see some more information about this environment, and then I start to figure out what's going on, right? So anyways, that would be my first thing. Like, make sure you're doing Linux if you want to be a Linux admin. And then the second one is I would tell you, find a group. I tell you guys all the time, if it's not our group, if you can't stand listening to me for even a single more minute, find somebody else. We're not the only game in town as far as teaching people Linux, right? We try to be open and accommodating, but not everybody wants to learn it the way that I kind of show it, and not everybody wants to do whatever. So I say all that to say, you know, find somewhere that you can kind of fit in and do Linux with those people. See how those people talk, see how those people worked through things. To that point, you know, we have a storm blowing in Phoenix, so hopefully I don't lose. I don't think we're gonna lose power, but we got a storm that just hit the side of my house. I've been hearing wind for a while, but the storm just hit. So I would tell you, you know, start to build your environment and do those things, but yeah, get into Linux, get into a command line in some way. You can use WSL on a Windows box if you have that. You can use Proxmox or XCPNG, any of these Type 1 hypervisors where you can go build systems out there, sure. But the point is get into Linux. Then I would say you want to start learning about the job. And we have things that we teach on what Linux systems administration looks like in the enterprise. These are all free courses. Like this is just a book that you can download, as is this one. That's more security engineering, so it's a little different. But the point is I would start to learn things about it and see how the jobs look and have somebody explain to you something like this, right? If I were to show you this, well, I'll pull this up real quick. And guys, I'm just answering a question real quick. That's why I'm going here. Let's say that, where's my Linux one? It's been a while since I opened it, so it might not be, nope. Not there. It's called Linux Systems Administration. So let's say that I pulled this up just for a second, and I said that most all IT work kind of looks like this. Most all of the things that are going on inside of a team with networking and other things kind of looks like this. It's the PPDIOO methodology. This is from Cisco, but it's I think it's a fantastic way to look at IT operations. We prepare, plan, design, implement, operate, and optimize our systems. But when you're coming in and you're wanting to be an admin and starting out, you're probably going to be down here on something that's already been built. I've never heard of an admin like getting hired to stand up the whole environment. I've heard of engineers and architects doing that stuff. Sure, you might have to build an environment from scratch. But as an admin, your first role, people probably set it up. You're probably coming into that environment and doing what we call KTLO. KTLO is keep the lights on. Keep the lights on. Keep the servers doing server stuff, turning electricity into heat, humming away, spinning disks. Keep that stuff working. That's what you start with. How might that look? You might be in the network operations, security operations center. You might be in the help desk. You might jump right into an admin role where you get root, or you might get into like a role where you're knocking out trouble tickets and you have to request access for certain things. That's sometimes the way different teams do different things to start. Everybody has different stuff like that. Enzo, it doesn't matter if we install UPSs. He's talking about having uninterruptible power supplies in my home lab, but it doesn't matter if the wife unplugs them, right? So that happened a few months ago. Anyway, so my point is this, and then I always ask you guys, if you're sitting around and operating systems, but then you're working like the third shift at night and you have time to update documentation, but instead you just sit around and read like all the DC and Marvel comic books, that's fine, guys. Third shift dudes tend to do that stuff. But if you tell me, Scott, I want to be over here on project work and I want the company to pay me more and trust me, you probably need to think about how to optimize the environment you're in, how to monitor it better, how to respond to incidents and troubleshooting and stopgap measures and all these things that we do, all these different types of procedures and stuff. And you might say, well, how do I find out what all those procedures are? And how do I find out what all those meetings are? And how do I find out all these ways that admins and engineers talk to each other? Well, that's what I was just talking about with that course we have. That stuff is all free, and that's what I show that stuff. But again, I tell you guys all the time, if it's not me, if it's not our group, ProLUG, go find anybody, right? Find anybody that's doing it. I do mention in here there's some pitfalls. Watch out for infotainment. Watch out for these different types of things that are not super useful. Infotainment is the idea that like you like watching somebody because 3,000 other people are watching them, and they're like, you know, they look like they're on Ritalin and they're bouncing around and stuff like that, but they're not actually saying anything of substance, and that's kind of a common thing. And I mean that's streaming in general, right? That's the common thing that people do. But let's get into this a little bit. So this is our overview. This is what we're going to talk about. And then I say at the end, if you can't find anybody to teach you in your organization, start teaching the junior people. Give me a second here, guys. 1 second. 1 second. I got to go check my I want to check outside real quick. Hold on. Oh man, we are in the middle of it, guys. We are. It's full on dust storm out there. It's like category 5. One of our guys that lives. Let me pull this up real quick here. One of our dudes lives about 45 minutes away from me. Oh, whoops! Didn't mean to show you guys that. Down here, it doesn't matter. It's just a message. Down here in Sports and Outdoors, one of our guys that lives he's about 45 to 50 minutes away from me. This is what his dust storm looked like, and that sun's still out. Isn't that wild? Pretty good. All right, anyways, so let's get into this a little bit. I'm only streaming for a few minutes because Sending Grounds was gonna stream. So if Sending Grounds streams, then we will go jump over there and see how he's doing. Go kickstart his stream a little bit because we're trying to get him streaming more. So Robedom, how's it going? We're not working too hard tonight, but we're talking a little bit about getting into the industry. So learning how you learn, right? This is an argument. I mean, if I asked 100 people that got into tech and 100 people that are in engineering, I'm going to hear 100 different answers about how they like to learn. Generally speaking, it splits off into one of two things. Like, you're either doing something like structured learning that somebody's put together for you, or you're over here doing stuff for yourself. And I'm not saying that everybody can't be Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting. If you guys remember him, he's like a genius. He goes to the library, reads all the books, he knows everything. He's the super smartest guy in the world, sure. Now, I'm not saying everybody can't do that. I'm just saying we know that people tend to respond well to structured learning, even though everybody thinks that they do unstructured learning best. Like if you asked everybody, they'd be like, I'd prefer to read and do stuff on my own. Most I think like the average person would say that. However, I don't think they're necessarily even being honest with themselves, because empirically, the people who tend to know the things and do the things are the people who went through structured learning the longest. So, right? So anyway, so we'll get into that a little bit, but everybody learns differently. However, there are ways to do this more effectively than maybe others. Instead of just randomly trying to learn, let's say you're trying to learn AWS, and you're like, all right, I'm going to learn about the Certified Cloud Practitioner, and I'm going to study it throughout the week. I'm going to try to get 4 hours of study in for the week. Let's say that's your goal to start. And you find yourself on Sunday night having not done anything all week. So then you go, okay, well, I'll just crash it all tonight and watch all. And then you find after like a few months of doing that you don't remember anything. Well, that's because a little daily is better than cramming once a week. That's almost universally true. You can't just go to the gym once a week and expect any results. It doesn't work, right? You're never gonna increase any lifts. You're probably not gonna lose any body fat. Like, you're not gonna get the results you want, is my point. And it's the same thing with your brain. You can't do cram sessions once a month and learn anything. I mean, again, there's outliers. There's people who can do that, but I can tell you almost universally, for anybody watching this, you're not that person. If you were that person, you would probably be not watching me. But anyways, do you need a Pomodoro timer? Pomodoro timers are like these 40, 15, or 45, 10, or there's a bunch of different, I mean, you can do any number splits you want within an hour. But they're focus time, chill time, focus time, chill time. And they help people to stay on task, right? In fact, I think I've got one. Yeah, I've got something running that's going to go off here in 4 minutes. I'm going to stop it. But I have something that runs throughout the day to remind me every 30 minutes to get back on task, because I'll be off running around and doing all this other stuff. Yeah, Robodom, it's a good idea to think of it as a marathon, not a sprint. And I would say not even that. If you feel like you can't jog anymore, you've got to keep walking. And this is the thing, like from the military, like on road marches and stuff. You're not really jogging on a road march. You just have to keep plodding your feet forward. And it's the idea that you just can't stop, right? You have to do something. Keep working on something. That's why I ask every Monday morning in the server, what's everybody working on? Because, if you miss the last goal, that's fine. Start Monday, keep going. You don't sit around and cry about the stuff that you missed, right? You got to know this stuff about yourself. You got to figure it out. Can you sit and watch videos for hours? Can you go watch all the reInvent videos and pick up all the stuff in there? Do you need to read things first? If you tell me, hey, at the end of the day, I'm too tired to do it, then I'm going to tell you, well, then you got to go to bed earlier and you got to wake up earlier and you got to do it in the morning before you go to work. right? If you told me, Scott, I want to be a writer, and I say, how much did you write last month? And you're like, nothing. And I say, well, and you're like, well, I'm too tired after work. And I go, well, then what you've got to do is get up at 4:30 in the morning, get to your system, start typing, get 5,000 words a day, right? Have you guys ever heard of NaNoWriMo? NaNoWriMo is one of the best little, let's see how that thing goes. Yeah, it's one of the coolest little things. They teach you, they started out with just, they did it every November, like over Thanksgiving time. You would just go in and you would write a novel. You had to average 5,000 words a day, but it was like a little challenge to yourself. Could I write a novel? I'll go back and edit it later, but could I do it? And there's stuff like that that you can work on. Mudbound Dragon, how's it going? Rating with a party of 31. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you guys. We just started a talk. I'm not actually streaming tonight. I'm just hopping on because one of our guys is maybe going to stream, and we were going to raid over to him here in a little bit. But here's a little bit about me. I've been a college professor for 17 years. I've been an engineer for close to 25. And I have this thing that I teach my college students. It's called Excelling in the Engineering Field After College. And what I did was I modified it for anyone. It's not just for people that are in college or out of college. So if anybody wants to hang out and hear me talk about that, that's what I'll do. A little thing to get you thinking about it. And then we talked about what engineering is. And at some level, it's like we deal in truth, and it's the search for truth. And then it's how do we do that effectively for a company? How do we prepare ourselves to do the purpose that a company pays us a lot of money for? And what's that look like, right? Like, what does that look like for study? What does that look like for working in groups and all that kind of stuff? So that's what we're doing right now. I run a group called the Professional Linux Users Group. A bunch of people that just sit around and talk about Linux. There's about 4,200 of us or so. I'd say there's probably like 500 active members at any given time, but we hang out down in the Discord and just basically share memes and talk about systems. That's what we do. But anyways, here's our overview that we had just gotten finished talking through, and we were on learning how you learn. So I was saying, you ask 100 engineers how they learn, they're going to tell you 100 different things, but you're going to find that some people like structured learning, some people like unstructured learning. The average person is going to tell you that they like unstructured learning, and that's what works best for them. But empirically, we know that going through courses and, just like, I don't know, look how knowledge has been passed through the ages. It tends to be through, study under mentors, through, at least let's say for the last 500 years, through collegiate activities, right? And it's not to say that there can't be, again, some 1 in 10,000 outlier that just reads the books like Good Will Hunting is the fucking smartest guy anybody's ever met. I'm not saying that guy doesn't exist. I'm just saying it's probably not 49 out of the 50 people that I talk to on a given day. It's probably less than that, right? Anyways, so these are the things you kind of got to do. And then we were talking a little bit about, I just finished talking about this, and then figuring out what interests you, right? Take a self-assessment on what you're interested in. I have one of those up in the Discord. We've talked about it recently, but at a real high level, if we talked about it real quickly, it looks like this. This is a self-assessment matrix. They're super easy to put together, but some people never do it. And self-assessment matrix might look like this. Right? This is the methodology. We don't have to go into that right now. But how well do you think you know Linux, storage, security, networking, SVN with, Git? That's just software versioning, right? Automation, monitoring, database, cloud, Kubernetes. And again, you can do any number of these you want. And then your technical self-assessment versus that's your skill versus your interest. Do you actually have interest to learn Linux? If not, or a lot of people, like security, maybe you're really good at security already, you think, but you're also really interested in security. Well, that's also maybe where you want to spend some time. Make sure that you feel good about that. And then we go down to, a SWOT analysis, like what am I good at? What are my strengths and weaknesses? And what are my external opportunities or threats, right? This is kind of a way that business tends to operate, but people can do that for themselves too. You are kind of your own business if you're teaching yourself and presenting yourself as an engineer out in the industry or trying to be an engineer, right? So anyway, so that's learning how you learn. There's a thing we use in college called Bloom's taxonomy. I say college, it doesn't have to be college. I learned it in college and I use it in college. This is a nice way, but this is a nice way to think about like how you learn things real quick, right? Like, so let's say I wanted to, what if I wanted to talk for like, let's say that we have 30 people here and I was going to start to talk about something something like modules in a Linux operating system, right? Well, before I got into like what modules were, right? Like now you know that a thing called if you knew nothing, you now know that a thing called modules exists, and you now know a thing called a Linux operating system exists. But before I really got into like the concepts of what were happening and the things that were moving and interacting with each other, and started to try to define everything we do as a process and how all the processes move, I might even have to tell you what a process is. The thing is, we would start at the bottom with almost like definitions of things. We would start down here with recalling basic words. Like if I was going to tell you a story, I would have to introduce all the characters, and it's the same kind of thing here, right? So you got to remember these basic things and words, and a lot of times these first 3 levels, really 1 and 2, and then starting into 3, are kind of like a bachelor's degree in any subject. I don't care what the subject is. Engineering, let's say. And we teach you the basics of like what you need to know, and then we start to talk about those concepts and how they interact a little bit. And then we maybe have you apply that to some real world problems. And these first 3 things are kind of what you do in a bachelor's level. But at least if I were explaining something or teaching something to you, I would have to talk about the concepts and the individual pieces first before we got into that next part. Hopefully that's clear to everybody. Then, as you start to know those things and you kind of understand how the blocks work together and how they move around, then I can have you analyze the different relationships to see, like let's say I was doing like SIPOC lanes, which are your supplier, your input, your process, your output, and your customers, right? SIPOC lanes are how processes move in engineering, right? And I said, okay. So a very common one is like the OSI model. So something is coming down the stack from the transport layer, and it's going down to the networking layer. Well, what's happening there? Well, as it comes down, it's being reported if it's a TCP or UDP type field, and and what the port is also known down at the IP and the network layer, right? And then also all this header information gets added from whatever was happening earlier. Like maybe we had done a DNS query and we had an IP address, so that IP address gets put on as like the destination header. And I start to talk about how these things interact, right? And if I'm doing that, right, and we're here and analyzing, you could then go, well, hold on a second. I understand that now. Could I take that same exact packet or whatever thing we were transporting, and could I put a different IP address in there and make it go somewhere else? And I go, yeah, you could actually. In fact, you probably wouldn't even be asking me. You would be physically doing it and practicing and generating these things from your systems, and you'd be able to go watch it happen, with Wireshark. And again, we can get down to the tools whenever we want, right? But we're just talking about the talking at a very high level here. We're not really getting down into the systems right now, but we go from here, and then after we analyze the thing and understand how it works, then maybe you can start to say which one's better. So now, you've done all these things and you've examined TCP and UDP, and I say, well, which one's better? We're doing streaming here, right? I'm sending packets out and they're getting captured over the web, but what's the better way to do this? Should it be secure and TCP with connections established and a bunch of acknowledgments and that kind of stuff, or should we just be shotgunning this over the network as fast as we can? By the way, this is like a well-known concept, so this isn't like this isn't a thing that you guys would be deciding now, but UDP's definitely won that one. It's faster. We just shotgun the data. We let the higher level protocols, typically something like real-time transport protocol, RTP, which is real-time transport protocol, RT are together for real-time transport protocol, and then or secure real-time transport protocol tends to be the way that we do that. There's some other protocols that also work in there, and we're not getting into all that, but that is a thing that then we could spin off and talk about if we wanted to, right? But you could evaluate and justify a standard position of what thing is the better route to take. If I were to ask you right now, like, hey, we want to build a web page and it needs to be highly available on the web, whether there were one connection to it right now or 10,000 connections to it, and we could scale at any point to 1 million connections, how would you design that to be ready to take that load and ready to do it? Would you just put like a single lamp stack out there on an IP address and person connects to it? Or would you put that system behind like a reverse proxy, a load balancer, and have 10 nodes ready to make connections? And then also maybe have like a CloudFront cache for all the common static pages. So even if people weren't able to get like you overwhelm the back end processing of the system, you were at least still able to get to the static page. And then you can evaluate and justify a standard position on what is the best way to roll that out. And guys, there's so much nuance to all those things that we could go into if we needed to. But and then you start to design a new way of doing things, right? And this is like master's level, if you guys ever do master's programs, and then this is like doctorate level up here, creating and evaluating new research and that kind of stuff, right? All right, so anyways, this is learning how you learn. But the point is, if I was going to try to stuff some information into your head, I would have to start with making sure you understood what the component pieces are. Otherwise, everything I say is just going to slide off your head like a little Plinko machine. Just going to go, or like if you don't hit the ball in, anybody here ever play pinball? I'm sure most of you have played pinball. You don't get the ball, slides right out of the head. Might as well not even have played the game, right? You've forgotten all about it. All right, so anyway, so learning how you learn, that's important. Another thing is learning about tasks, right? The way you learn how to do tasks and become proficient. This is a conscious competency model, and it deals with the hands-on of something, not necessarily the knowledge domain. We just talked about the knowledge domain. This is more of like the can I handle it and can I do it? If I said, hey, we're going to open up Wireshark, we're going to look for TCP packets only, and then we're going to find TCP streams that were over 1,500 communication lines in the last minute. I don't know, something like that. Well, how you would do that, probably you'd start over here if you'd never done it before, and you wouldn't know what you didn't know. You would be what we call unconsciously incompetent. People hate being called incompetent, but it's an accurate engineering term, right? To be incompetent about something. And also it's a good way to look at, I'm not saying you should call yourself incompetent in front of a mirror when you're sad or something. I'm saying you should understand there's things you don't know about things. And if you want to get good at those things, this is a problem that happens in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu too, right? Like people don't even know what they don't know until they step into class, right? Then you become consciously competent. You realize there are things that I didn't even know that I didn't know, right? And this is, you don't know, but you know that you don't know and you want to learn. That's kind of what happens here in conscious competence. Then we move over here and we start to develop some kind of competency. So this is the axis over here of we're now competent on something, and we're conscious of the fact that we are competent of things, but we don't know everything still. And then you get down here to unconscious competence, where you don't even have to think about it anymore. You can just do things. I tell you to go look at packets and frames, and I tell you to go update the Linux systems, and you just can do it, right? But I'm going to tell you that you might think, well, that's where I want to be in my career. I eventually want to get to where I just know this thing so well that I don't even think about it anymore. And I would tell you that's actually, that sounds good at first, but this is actually not where you want to be. If you find yourself here as an engineer, you need to break something and go back to here. Engineers want to stay here. You want to be constantly learning. You want to be constantly kind of moving from things that you know but don't know how to do well and moving them into, this is like your toolbox over here. These are things that you can do well. You can do them like in a meeting with engineers or managers or something. They say, hey, we need to go check out this thing about this broken service. Who wants to throw up and drive on the call? And you should be like, if you're somebody that can do the command line, this is something you should feel comfortable doing. Like if you're like, hey Scott, can you go drive around the command line a little bit? I should be able to jump in my environment here and drive and talk to you guys and do the stuff that we do as engineers, right? I should feel comfortable about that. So I want to be over here on some things, but I constantly want to be learning. There are so many stories out there, guys. Like you go find Reddit for the last 15 years and look up admin or engineer forgot his job. I guarantee you there's 100 stories plus on there. I remember reading them over the years where the guy, like something changed in the environment or some new technology came in or something broke in some script and he wrote it 5 years ago but doesn't remember how to fix it. And like that's like the tale, that's not the tale as old as time, but it's pretty close to it, right? What's the tale as old as time? Beauty and the Beast, right? What's the second most common thing for people that have been here? What's the second most common thing? For me, it's unrealized intelligence. I know so many smart people that are never going to do anything. Being smart isn't the litmus test. Being able to build things and do things as an engineer is, right? So learning how you learn, again, I haven't talked about intelligence at all through any of this. I'm just telling you how you pick stuff up, right? Another one to learn how you learn, this is one we started using more recently. I actually picked this up from an old college that I used to teach at that doesn't exist anymore. But we start at the bottom with exploring. So we facilitate learning, activation of prior knowledge. Maybe I know that all of you here have at least had some basic OS experience because you've worked in an operating system. You probably understand what patching is. You probably understand what downtime is, even if I never told you about it. You probably understand, like customer impact and these kind of things. So then if I wanted to talk to you about some new concept, we could sit around and have like a discussion about that for a little bit. And after we had that discussion for a little bit, then we can go into a lab and we can start to practice those skills, right? Practicing the skills are discrete tasks, coming in and saying, okay, can you SSH into a server called Auto 5? And in that server, can you check all the disks and all of the mounted file systems for disk usage? And I go, disks are LSBLK. We don't really have but one disk on there. And then df-h, here's all the mounted file systems and their usage. We see that most everything is mounted tempfs. There are a few things that are mounted from some other system, probably NFS. Right? And then I go and I look and I say, okay, I built the lab, so I know it, right? But my point is, if the task was to SSH to a server and figure out certain components of the server, this may seem like a simple few commands, right? And it is. But as a set of like practicing the tasks, that's all I would have you doing, practicing those tasks. And then we might apply that in a real world situation. So I might say, hey guys, there's a set of servers that are having some type of problems. We need to figure out what the problem is and figure out how, these 1 or 2 broken servers relate to the other 8 servers that are working in the environment. Some of you might say right away, well, I would start comparing them. That's true. But how are you going to do that? What are the commands you're going to do? And I would have you go and drive and work through that and think through that, because practicing this stuff, doing what we call like tabletop exercises and walkthroughs, very common security and chaos engineering and what we call like SRE, site reliability engineering type practices, where we walk through. It's like practicing the problem before the problem comes. I tell you guys all the time, you do not want to be trying to figure out how to use a command at 2 a.m. when you got called out, right? And maybe you do, but I'll tell you, like, I just want to be doing my shit and getting done with it and going about my night or whatever. Hold on, let me check, make sure sending's not on. Let me just check real quick here. If sending's on, we're gonna go raid them. No, okay. Well, we won't raid them just yet, but I want to. If we can get them to, if we can get them to pop up, we'll go. Okay, but we're gonna keep going on this for a little bit. But this has also been recorded and stuff like that. Did I? Hold on a second. I didn't remove that from the other slide when I copied it and moved this in. So just don't worry about the incompetence access right now. But yeah, so we explore, we practice, we apply things. That is a solid way to pick up skills and learn and get feedback, right? We want to feedback that we've learned something, right? And that we've been able to apply it properly to a real problem. So these are valuable things. And then the next thing that I might tell you to do is look into certifications. You don't have to take certification tests, guys. You can just study for certs if you want to. Now, it looks good on a resume to have a cert completed. It looks good on a resume to have anything completed, right? But if you're just like, hey, I don't really care about spending, $800 right now for a CISSP, and that's not really where my career is going to go, but I do want to know the stuff from the CISSP, I would say that's very valid. I think that's a good thing. We call that the body of knowledge, right? You'll hear that called the BOK, B-O-K, the body of knowledge. And look, the reason I use that as an example, because I really like it. Let me show you guys this real quick. Here is the... if I go find the sunflower doc, this is one of the best free things on the web. Like, just hands down one of the best free things you can find on the web right here. If you've never seen this before, this is the... move this out of the way here. It's called the sunflower doc. It is the 8 domains of the current CISSP, right? And it is, mine's a little dated. Mine's from 2017. Actually, I think mine's from, 2019. So I got mine a little later, but this is still the domains, right? Information hasn't changed that much to make this, this would still be valid for like 95% of things, let's say. But then let's say you came down through this and started to look at it, and here's domain 1, security and risk management. These are the component pieces that I would study if I was getting ready for my CISSP. Now, if you guys don't know that certification is 5 miles wide and 2 inches deep. It is a very broad certification. When I took it, there were about 500 questions on it. Now I think it's only about 150 questions, and it's dynamic, so it'll ask you more depending on how well you're doing, I think. I haven't taken it. I took it when it was still the old test that was like 500 questions. You had like 6 hours to take it or something. It was a bear when I took it. I'm not saying it's harder then or now. I'm just saying that it's a different test. But anyway, so you come in here and maybe your domain 1 security and risk management aren't good. So you want to spend some time in here and learn it, right? So the ones that I always show you guys this when we talk about this. I took some pre-tests when I was studying for my cert. There was one domain that I never scored under 97% in, and it was this. Well, networking communication security. I've been teaching that in college for, at that time, like 12 years. Now, like 15 years. Because when did I get my CISSP? I think it was 2000. I think I got it in 2017. And maybe 2018 and 2019. I have to go look on my certification. But I never scored anything under like almost 100 on this stuff, because this is stuff I knew well. But stuff I didn't know well was down here. Like identity and access management I knew pretty well too, but security assessment and testing, that one wasn't too bad. Security operations, I did not know a lot about evidence and evidentiary, how you handle evidence and what you do, the evidence life cycle. I couldn't have told you that before. But my point is, if you wanted to study some body of knowledge and learn about a thing, even if you're not going to take the cert, that is still a very valid thing to be able to go and talk and get into a security role in an organization, like knowing what people might ask you about and talking about it in a informed type way of doing it. ISC squared isn't the only one in the game. There's also CompTIA. They've got I've never heard anything bad about the Net Plus and the Sec Plus. Actually, I take that back. Last year, I heard one thing bad about these certs. One of our guys pointed out, and I've never heard this before or since, but he said, I've heard people say that they don't like Net Plus or Sec Plus because it sounds like you just took those because you didn't know what you wanted to study or know specifically, so you just took a generic cert. And I was like, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's fair, because so many colleges, like even my college, DeVry, we teach Cloud Plus for sure, and then Net and Sec Plus are a big part of like the curriculum. So like we encourage students to get ready for those. I imagine other colleges do too. I remember high schools do. Well, how are you going to blame the students? They didn't even know, right? They were in that unconsciously incompetent. I'm making up words. That's not a word. Anyways, so Linux Foundation, great. Their certifications are hands-on. So if you're practicing for your CKA, you can do that in Killer Coda for free, by the way. I think that's a great organization for that. And then there's cloud certs. There's all kinds of cloud certs out there, right? All right. Anyways, here's a bunch of free certs that I know of. These are up in our Discord under Beginner Start here. But Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, if you want to go get your white belt and be able to put that on a resume, maybe you have a one-page resume, but you're not really in tech yet, but you want to get in tech. You can't go wrong learning about APIs and how to hit APIs. Now, this is a very high-level course that deals with what APIs are. It doesn't deal with how you interact with them. How you interact with APIs, there's some good Killer Coda stuff on that, which again is a free site. And then there's also some of our stuff kind of teaches you a little bit about that as well. There's Gremlin Chaos Engineering, and I think that's a really good site. Gremlin is a tool, but they teach you chaos engineering in the context of being a site reliability engineer. So I think they're a great cert, great tool. If you want to get networking under your belt, there's an IPv6 cert out there. Did you guys know there's a free cert for IPv6? Maybe you've been hearing about IPv6 for the last 20-something years in the industry, because I remember hearing about it in college, and I was in college in 2000 actually is when I started, when I was in the Army still. I've been hearing about IPv6 forever, but how much are you going to implement it? Well, you can at least go know about it and be ready to talk about it on an interview. I think that's valid. There's a bunch of certification where the training is free. There's a lot of training that's free, but the certification itself is not free. So then we're talking about Killer Coda Labs, you can go spend all day on there and they won't charge you nothing. I've literally been building labs for them and in there for like almost 3 years now. Never charged me nothing. They give me a little thing that pops up every now and then that says, hey, you can go premium if you want. And I just never have because I figure we send so many people over to them anyways that I'm sure some people are using their premium. There's all the other belt levels of Six Sigma. The training is free. We might even, and I've talked about this over the years. I'm classically trained in project management. One of my 2 master's degrees has that as a sub. So I have like my MBA is an emphasis in project management. I know it's terrible. Trust me, I never wanted to be a project manager, guys. I always just wanted to be an engineer. But the levels of Six Sigma and how that works with engineering, tremendously useful. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you tell me, hey, Scott, I'm just going to build Grafana dashboards my whole career. And I say, that's wonderful. There's a lot of process analysis that would really behoove you to know as an engineer, right? There's a lot of ways that we look at data and we look at upper and lower control limits of like the output of a process to understand what is the actual value of tracking that process that would make you better at what you do. It would objectively make you better because you would understand why you're doing the thing. You wouldn't just be building pretty dashboards, right? For example, in our environment, right, in our lab here, for people that haven't been here, we have a fair amount of lab stuff going on. But this one here, I'm gonna move it over so you guys can see it okay. This one right here, we use as a heads-up display. It's a HUD, HUD, right? Heads-up display. And this just shows us all the environment, all of our lab servers. There's 5 Rocky boxes, 5 Hammer boxes, 5 Auto boxes. The one that's got the highest usage goes to the top. Just floats to the top. If any one of them's missing, like if I rebooted half of them right now, they would just disappear here until they came back up and started reporting. So as a heads-up display, it's very quick to look at this and go, yeah, that looks like it's about 15 nodes. We're good. But if I went and rebooted the nodes and it dropped to like right here, very quickly somebody like in our NOC could just look at it and go, oh, there's only 5 of the 15 nodes? That's not good. Why is the lab so short on resources? Did everybody reboot labs that quick, or did Scott's wife go unplug all the servers again? That actually did happen one time, right? But we were up and around. Well, we have about 80 servers in the lab, but the lab that's shared out for everybody is only 15 servers currently right now, right? Anyways, that's neither here nor there. There's Terraform and Vault. There's free training on HashiCorp. They'll drop you in a shell, teach you how to use their tools. It's free, but the certs are $75 each. So I haven't studied for those in years. I passed Terraform and the Vault a few years back, but I never recertified them because HashiCorp did that whole business source license and kind of changed their model, and then they got bought by IBM. So, they were great tools. We still use Vault in the home lab here, but anyways, then there's data science. You can go learn. You can go build a whole data analytics and like data science career on Kaggle for free. You can go learn how to do it. You can go compete with people. You can go get your name out there. You can do everything you want to on Kaggle for free. They don't charge you nothing. But if you wanted to go take like a data analytics certification or something, that's not free, but that's free. You want to learn web stuff, man, guys, I learned almost all my HTML in the wild, and most things that I reference are still on W3 schools. MySQL too. Like if you just say, Scott, I don't know MySQL from Postgres from a flat file with comma separated values. I don't even know the differences between the 3 of them. I would tell you, go start over there. It's a great free place to get like and by the way, this is you guys know why I always emphasize free stuff is, let's say you go to Killer Coda and you go, ugh, command line is shit, I hate that. And then you go to Six Sigma and you're like, that's okay. Vault's kind of fun. I could see myself doing that that data security stuff in a team where I'm just maintaining Vault for teams to come through. Okay, I can do that. But then you get down here to like web security and you're like, oh shit, I can just like bash my own servers with a whole bunch of like weird stuff that we call fuzzing to see how they behave. And when they behave badly, we laugh at them and then we go and report it to the company. That's my jam. So my point is, all this stuff's free. So do the free stuff because, and guys, I'm going to tell you something. I know there's some people here that don't know me, but I tell you guys this, I've had over 5,000 college students in my career now. I have had students come to me and we'll be doing like deep Cisco stuff, like Cisco command line stuff. And this will be like a 300 level course. And they'll be like, I hate this stuff. When do I get past all this? And I'm like, this is the job. This is what you do as a network engineer. Network engineers just live down here. Yeah, granted, you automate it and you push it out and you use your SDN, your controller and stuff, but like, man, that's an expensive thing to figure out you hate. 3 years of your life and probably tens of thousands of dollars in college costs. That is a pricey mistake. That is a terrible thing to find out that long. I would rather go here and find out in a few minutes that I hate Linux. If I looked at this, right, if somebody dropped me in a shell like this and I go, nope, I'm not doing that all day. I'm not doing that for 10, 12 hours a day as an engineer. Fuck that. I hate it. I want to do the pretty thing. I want to do this. I want to do this. Yeah, Grafana is a different thing, right? But Grafana has its own pipelines, and Grafana has all these things you can learn. But by the way, Grafana is free. This is actually one of my favorite things to show you guys. Grafana.com. They have a thing right here. They will teach you Grafana, and they will let you get into their system, and it's free. Watch right here. They have a plan. I've been on this plan for years. I signed up for this plan years ago. They have never charged me or bugged me about anything. This is called their Grafana free cloud tier, and it says right here, put the credit card away. They will never charge you within these limits. They won't let you go over the limits either. But my point is, this is free, right here. So if you say, hey, I want to start doing some fun stuff in a lab, but I also want to monitor it and do some cool stuff, and I don't want to build all that infrastructure stuff out that Scott has or any of these other guys do, you could absolutely 100% go build this stuff for free in the cloud. And that free cloud solution will never charge you. They've never charged me. I've had them. We could go log into my Grafana. It's terrible. My home Grafana is way more complex than anything out there, right? Like my home lab stuff is way... I gotta look at this. I gotta monitor why that's so low. I probably need to edit the... What's my upper limit? No hard upper limit. Left, Y, upper, third. Let's go 20. Apply. That's a little easier to see. We might even go down to 10. Sometimes we used to go over 10. We actually will when the project starts going again. We'll start going over 10. When we start, the courses, by the way, the courses are free. We were looking at a dust storm. The courses are free, but they start up again in September. So we're going to do the security engineering course round 2 is going to come up. And then the tentative, well, this will be the start, the 16-week automation course, and mostly Ansible, but we're going to be doing Bash and Python as well. All right, let me get out of there. So build yourself a home lab. Let me go check something again real quick here. I do not see. We need sending grounds to get on. What did I miss here? Flying Wookiee, sell the razor, you make money on blades. Yeah, that's true. Full disclosure, I use Grafana. I think Grafana is a great tool. I really do. Like, my old way of doing stuff, guys, like when I got into the industry, was just Nagios for everything. I know people call it Nagios. I don't care what it's called. Nagios, right? I built that into everything. And I actually it's just I built that into everything, and I would control it all with these Perl scripts that I had written, and it worked really well, and I could deploy it to like thousands of nodes. It was no problem. But nowadays, I actually this is what we use in the home lab here. I really like this I really like this model right here. This is our ProLUG monitoring architecture. This is what we do, and we built them all just to play around with them, and then they just ended up kind of working. So we're like, all right, that's what we'll keep doing. To be fair, in the lab that we're in the 15 lab machines that are up now, and when they deploy, they always new ones check in. We have Promtail and Node Exporter. Then they push logs to Loki and Prometheus, and then Grafana picks them up automatically, right? I always say automagically because it's like it's magic until I show it to you, and then you're like, that's it. It's that simple. Yeah, it's simple. That's how it works. Once you guys see how it works, it's not magic anymore, right? So, flying meets it. Yeah, eating their own dog food. If you guys haven't heard that term, eating your own dog food, it's the idea that like if it's good enough for me to sell to other people, I should also use it in my company. I should also use it for myself. Oh, Meezy, thanks for the subscription. Hopefully the ads don't bug you too much anymore then. So yeah, that's that. Let's talk about building a home lab a little bit. I think that so I think building a home lab is one of the best things you can do if you're starting to get committed. If you're again, when you're just like putting your toes in the water and you're like, "Ah, I don't know if I want to do this Linux stuff or if I want to be project manager or maybe I want to go be in sales, right? Maybe I want to do sales, but I still want to do some sales engineering. There's actually a really good track. One of my buddies has come and talked to the ProLUG before, but he works over at Red Hat and he does what's called pre-sales engineering. Pre-sales, he actually runs an academy that you can go find on LinkedIn called Pre-Sales Academy, and I'm like 90% sure it's free. They may have a paid-for version of it, but I'm pretty sure it's free. And what he teaches you how to do is to deal with pre-sales engineering. So what pre-sales engineering is it's not sales. You're not really trying to convince people to use something. Somebody else has already done that. You're coming in and helping design something. It's almost like an architecture thing, but you're not quite doing architecture for them because they probably already have architecture in their environment. You're designing a solution for them within the confines of what they already have paid for or started to agree that they would want to test or look. Maybe you're building proof of concepts for them. Maybe you're doing like individual tests. I remember when we already had Tower running, me and my brother, and when I was working at AAA, and they came in and they're like, well, let's get like 2 or 3 of these things working. And we're like, we have all this other stuff working already. And they're like, well, that's pretty good then. So like really they were just coming in to try to finish stuff up and sell it to the management. But we were already using the tools, so we didn't really care. I don't necessarily care or need the sales stuff, but I like that if they're going to send me an engineer that also does it to come in and just kind of work on stuff with us. So it's good. Enzo said AWS has a really cool career path going from technical job to technical sales. Yeah, Enzo, we've had, if you've heard some of the guys that have come in, Enzo, I know you know most of the guys that are in AWS, but if you met the one that came, he came on Friday before we did our big workshop like a couple weeks ago. I'm trying to think of what his name is online. I think it's called, I think he's Sax Rule in our Discord. He is working. He's been like a TAM, technical account manager, for a long time. I think like 7 or 8 years now, if I recall. He's been there quite some time. But yeah, that's what he does. And I want to say he's got like 8 or 9 of their certs. He might have more certs than Fisherman does, actually. Not 100% sure of that. But anyways, build yourself a home lab, right? Get something that you can go and work in. I run 4 machines here. They're physical machines. They're in a little half rack over there. I virtualized them up with XCP-NG as a Type 1 hypervisor on them. I can maintain them pretty much from everywhere. I can also then jump into my environment, right? So I got my little jump boxes that I jump into. We were doing some website stuff yesterday. Right? And let's get out of there. And my little jump box here in my environment can jump to any of my nodes, and I can do anything in any of my environment that I want. In fact, some of these I need to clean up because they don't exist anymore. But they might exist again, so I'm going to leave them in there. But in my lab environment, I can go do anything I want. I can go work on any nodes that I want to, and I can do it all right here, right? I tend to like to leave my environment open using a tool called Screens. Some people like tmux, but then that is just a persistent. Basically, it's almost like I left a workstation open on the node. And the reason I do that is because if the laptop that I'm sitting on right here in my home lab, if it just disconnects, or if I take it down to Mexico, or if I go up to Montana, it doesn't matter where I am in the US, I can connect back to my server, and I can do all the things that I need to do in my node from a persistent workspace. It's almost like, I really like Screen as like a pane of glass that you can connect to from anywhere. Veer said, hi sir, how are we going to hands-on with building the home lab in this session? No, we're not going to do probably hands-on too much. I'm not rebuilding it right now for sure. My home lab is then run through a few different methods, right? We can build nodes one-off if we need to. So I can come here, I can go to any node, like let's say I went to this InfluxDB server, and I could just drop any of my ISO library on there. So I have a shared out ISO library over NFS, and I can just mount things and build stuff one-off if I want to. That's not super interesting. That's very like high level engineering work. I just heard something fall over. Give me a second, guys. I gotta go check the house out real quick. We do have a dust storm blowing through, so give me a second. I'll be right back, guys. full-on monsoon raining outside right now. I am missing a full-on, like, Phoenix, Arizona monsoon right now. All right. Climbed up my stairs, so anyways, need my camera to chill out for a second here. Let's see, is that better? All right, a little better. So we check out everything, and you can do a lot in AWS. You don't have to go and just do stuff like anymore nowadays. You really can just jump into an AWS environment. I don't have my AWS up right now, but I have Lambda out there running. Actually, it's funny. You get like your Lambda stuff will go end of service life. So I have things that don't run anymore on like older Python. And then, yeah, my point in saying all that is you can just build out a lab if you wanted to, right? And then what do you do with a lab? So you've got a lab. What do you do with it? Well, you do stuff that interests you, right? You don't have to be directly related to what you do. I do a lot with digital signals. I have since college. Like I used to do ham radio stuff. I used to build little, we'll call them jammers. But I'm going to give that with the caveat that the FCC says that you can generate any signal you want within 60 feet of your own home. So I'll say that I've only ever used those for testing purposes. And, right, so you can do things and you can mess with stuff. In all other ways, I apply and adhere to Part 15 of the FCC's code, which is we do non-interference with other things. We do only what we need to on our unregistered bands, and then we come out, right? But anyways, I don't have to run ProLUG or build labs, but that helps keep me sharp, and I enjoy doing that. So I build little labs and stuff like that, but those are personal projects. Our home lab here has all the Werewolf servers. Well, it has the one Werewolf server. If you guys aren't super familiar with Werewolf, that's fine. It is a server that kind of runs in an environment and configures all the other nodes around it. So if I jump over here to like Auto 5 and I just reboot him, right? What'll happen to that node is he'll go down, and if we go watch him at the console, he'll come up, but he won't know who he is because he's a stateless node. So as he comes up in the environment, he's actually going to do a DHCP request, and Werewolf is going to respond and give him all his iPixie information, and then he's going to boot up, and he's going to pull, you're going to watch him pull all of his information over from the Werewolf node, and basically it's truly a bootstrap, and then he's going to start himself up. So over here on the left, we're seeing ping, we're seeing fails on ping. On the right, as soon as he starts to come up, you're going to see him do DHCP right here. DHCP is going to drop into iPixie. Here we go. And he's going to pull all of his information. He just found out right there that he is Auto 5. He found his Automation Rocky 9 image that he's going to pull, and he started booting, right? He's still not up on the network yet. He's using a DHCP address. He's going to boot his two-stage Dracket, which is a different init RAM FS that he's going to switch over to as he comes up. The kernel is going to remount all of the file systems according to etcfs tab, and it's going to send everything to tempfs, and then that box will be back up and we'll be able to jump into them. You might say, Scott, why did you do that? Why did you do that instead of just having like a stateful node, like a full image node that could just reboot and come up? Well, because when I have lab servers for you guys to log into, which we do, you guys can jump into them, kill them at any time. When they come back up, they'll just be a clean version of the system again, right? And we've got all kinds of diagrams and stuff on that. I could show you guys what that all looks like. But watch, he's booting right now. There's some errors because the hardware is old. You'll see some warnings for old stuff. That's fine. You're going to see him boot what's called his system overlays. And when he's done with the system overlays, right around the time this gets to about 120 to 130, you're going to see him actually start responding on ping. We're going to be able to jump back in him and see how, healthy and back to normal that server is. And he didn't, when he came up, he doesn't have disks in him that are actually functioning as, like, he doesn't have any disks inside of this server that are functioning as like his OS disk or his boot disk. He has a disk on him that you could mount if you wanted to, but largely, there he is, he's pinging, he's up. been up 1 minute. He's there. DF-H shows that he is remounted. So if you had stuff stored down in like lab work, like you were Zorgel or something, one of our guys, he's got all his stuff down here, right? Whatever he was working on. And you guys will be making those and doing those when you're doing the automation course again. So all that to say, like, you can do a lot of personal projects. You can also do work-like projects, right? I am a big fan of Ansible. I use Ansible in my professional world all the time. I automate things outside of my normal job, so I do that as well in the home lab. I say I monitor everything at home and work. I maintain close to, this is old, but I was maintaining about 5,000 servers at the time when I first wrote this. And depending on which project I'm on, I maintain up to maybe about 10,000 servers. But on different projects, I maintain different numbers of them depending on what I'm doing. I build out Telegraph, Influx TV, and Grafana. I pull system data, weather data, all kinds of, I monitor my dog. Well, Ranger passed away in July, but we monitored Ranger for a long time. And then we build out all these things, and we practice the build out of it. There's Ranger right there, in fact. And I can pull all the data and watch CloudWatch into Grafana, and I can pull all the cloud data out into Grafana. We do all kinds of stuff, right? But the point is, I can do that stuff in my home lab at my leisure without having to do it at work or any of that kind of stuff. I can kind of mess around, hang out. We hang out down the Discord pretty often. In fact, if you guys don't know, our Discord has a bunch of events. There's Bash Study Group that's pretty popular on Saturdays, and we do have a professional pen tester that I've known for about 17 years in the industry coming out to talk to you guys about getting into pen testing if that's what you want to do. This is what he does every day. He's got an OSCP and a G-Pen, and then he's got a CISSP, which isn't really related to it, right? CISSP is just knowledge. But the OSCP and the G-Pen, he can tell you about getting them, what you need to study, what you need to work on. You guys can have back and forth with them. Typically, the way we do that is the speaker comes out and talks for about an hour, and then we jump down into another channel, and then you guys can ask questions live and stuff. So it's pretty fun, pretty interactive process. But my point is there's a bunch of stuff where we can go in and we can hang out and talk with people and work on stuff and do that in the lab. So that's what we do around here, right? But this is the talk on like being ready to be an engineer and working in engineering. So we're on the section on professional projects. So when we go down to a book collection, I think you should keep a book collection. I really do. I think the internet's great for referencing things. I think AI is great for referencing things, and acting is kind of like a junior engineer that's a gopher that goes in it, and maybe I know a lot of guys have been using it to like talk to and ask questions about like the OSI model and learning networking. And my understanding is I don't really use it much, but I know quite a few people who are like, this is great as like a tutor. It's great to like explain to me things and tell me things that I don't know about things. And I say that's awesome, but it seems like, at least talking to people, it's wrong pretty often. It's very confidently wrong, at least somewhat often, especially in blocks of code. So we still need to think about maybe the rigor of and correctness of like a real book. So I think there's really good books out there, like Humble Bundle. They will have book series. There's one up right now. I think it's almost done, but it's on Linux and Linux engineering topics. So that's a good one, if you don't mind spending $20 here and there. We have a book, but this book is simply on labs, so it's not everything. We have books that are free that have way more content than the paid for book, but the paid for book is about the labs specifically. So if you just need hands-on experience, that's good. There's a whole slew of free books online from Google, the sre.google books. That's one of the best things anybody can show you. If you guys have never seen this is really a good thing to spend your time in right here. It's the SRE books from Google, and they're free. They'll tell you all about site reliability engineering, things at scale and capacity that you probably are never going to hit in a normal career, but they've done it and they've distilled it down into useful monitoring practices, like how we talk about what the term reliability even means and what that kind of digs into. So there's some really good stuff in these books, right? We reference those quite a bit in some of our courses because I just think there's great little blocks that people have in there for insight. And then maybe if there was anything that I think was like the number one thing, if the number one thing is probably getting hands-on in some way, so getting in Killer Coda or building your lab and doing Linux, that's probably number one. But a very, very close second is going and listening to people talk about it. It doesn't have to be professional Linux user group. It doesn't have to be me. It can be anybody out there. Like we used to have this mental health place out here in Arizona. It was called Charter, and they used to always have these ads on that said, "If you don't get help at Charter, please get help somewhere." I'd tell you the same thing. If you can't stand our group for even another minute, go find a group that's talking about the things that you want to learn about, and go sit there and listen to them talk about it, or ask questions. Ask informed questions, right? Like go look things up and then say, hey, can somebody clarify this point versus this point? I found a lot of things that make me think that they're similar. And, you don't just ask, what we call like low level questions, or some people call them just softball questions, where it's like most engineers are going to look at that and go, man, or you're going to get a lot of links to let me Google that for you. You don't want that, right? You want to have you want to show that you're respectful of their time, but you're also, anyways, I'm not going to tell you guys how to act on the internet, but I am going to tell you that engineers don't suffer that kind of stuff very much. They're like, fuck that guy. You get blocked right away. I know engineers, guys, I'm going to tell you this. People don't believe me, but when I worked at Lockheed Martin, I knew engineers that, like, if you were wasting their time, they would turn back to their computer and not talk to you anymore. I actually knew dudes that did that to people. I would see them do that. I'm like, damn, man. And they're like, fuck it, man. If they're not going to bother their time, why would I waste my time on them? And that's... But anyways, technology podcasts. There's a bunch of them. And I say don't get sucked in by infotainment. Infotainment are like... I mean, like, and I'm going to say this, and people are going to be like, I don't like them. Okay. Generally speaking, everybody loved Howard Stern in, like, the 90s and early 2000s. Or if you didn't like Howard Stern, you liked whoever. And I'm not saying that because, like, I liked them. I'm just saying people liked listening to them. They were fun. They had stuff going on. They had music. They had sound effects. They had all this stuff, right? But there's people that are really good at being infotainment, and everybody hangs out in their channels, but they're not, like, I don't know. But I tell people don't get sucked in by that. If your goal is to learn shit, don't go watch that stuff, because you're going to sit there for 4 hours and then at the end of it realize that it was just brain rot, right? Like and guys, I got no problem. Like, I was right before I hopped on here, I was watching a show called like Werewolf or something, or Wolf or something, some new movie. Yeah, I get brain rot. Don't get me wrong, guys. I like to do other shit too. I'm just saying, when it's time to like sit down and do work, don't think that some of these people are teaching you anything, because if you take stock of what you've heard from them, you haven't learned anything. So anyways, that's that. Slack, Discord, or Usenet groups are great for topics that you're interested in. There's a really good one I always tell people about, Measure Camp and Measure Slack. If you guys haven't heard of them, if you want to do data analytics or Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager, they're like the best place on the web to get into. My buddy Jared has been a part of them for like, I think 7 or 8 years now, and he has had a really long and all the way leading up to like data architecture for a pretty big web company. They're $1 billion a year revenue company. I think he said they just hit like 1.4 billion or something, because they have to publish their revenue, right? So not like I have insider information or anything. They're a publicly traded company. I tell you, get involved in open source projects. You could close the browser right now, open a new one, go get involved with an open source project. Find something that's interesting to you, right? If you want to code. I'm not necessarily a coder, although I can code my way out of a paper bag. But there's an Ubuntu and an HPSF.io, which is actually Linux Foundation. So these are some high performance compute ones, because they've been trying to modernize high performance compute, the area that I work in, for a long time, and it's just not sticking. It's not taken. So we're trying to get that better. There's hundreds of free labs online with Killer Coda. Man, you want to learn how to use like Argo CD? They've got like 30 labs up there for free that you can just go get your hands on Argo CD and break it and build it and break it and build it until you understand it. And I think, I really don't think there's anything more valuable than that people are giving away online than that kind of information. There's a lot of government resources. I work with NOAA. Some of you guys know that. I work with National Oceanographic Atmospheric Agency. There's library guides. Did you guys know there's free seminars all the time for the public? Oh, what's going on here? Have they not fixed their crap? Hold on. Oh, let me open one of my other browsers real quick. I think they don't have their see if I can just find their science series. Yeah, it's good enough. This is in Firefox, right? But I use a bunch of different browsers for different reasons. But here's a bunch of the seminar series where they'll just teach you science stuff, guys. If you didn't know, if you're like, hey, I didn't know that people wanted to teach me how to do science stuff for free and show me all the open data sets that are out there for me to use. And did you guys know that stuff's all out there for you? You're really only, I really honestly think in like this modern day of, technology and stuff, you're really only limited by like what you kind of think about you want to do, and then what you end up just picking up and going and doing. There's so much stuff out there. Like, I don't know. I don't think there's anything out there that you couldn't do if you wanted to. Data.gov, which is an open data site by the U.S. government. I remember I used to show this a few months ago, and it was like 315,000 data sets, and I just checked the other day, and it's 340,000 data sets. So they are constantly adding more data sets to this. And the reason, and I know this from working with the government, they know that a couple of like amateur scientists that are interested in doing stuff will actually churn through and figure out stuff in data better than whole teams that they pay for it. I don't know if you guys knew that, but the government figured that out long ago. That's why they have so much stuff that's open for the public. Because somebody just crawling around on data with some little ML that's like just pushing the algorithms around and trying to figure shit out, they figure stuff out about data all the time. They figure out all kinds of weather patterns and trends and stuff like that. In fact, there was a competition we were going to do last year. I didn't get enough people interested to do it, but they were going to drop a bunch of buoys in the Gulf. It was long enough ago. I don't want to get in an argument with anybody, but it was long enough ago that it was still called the Gulf of Mexico, so that's what we'll call it. And they were going to drop them in there, and then they were going to have you use AI to figure out where they all went. All they were going to tell you was wind speed at the whatever the wave break line was, and wind speed in the general area. That was all they were going to tell you. And then they had already captured all the data for 3 weeks. And they were giving you 3 weeks of data and then 3 weeks of data to tell them where they were. And then they wanted to see who could accurately predict where those things had all moved. There was like 5,000 of them or something like that, right? Omizi said channels, groups form similar to ProLUG that you're aware of. I'd say measure Slack for sure if you're doing data analytics stuff. Oh, where else would I send you if you were doing, like, let's say you want to be a software engineer and you were like, hey, I want to go grind out leak code and know stuff like that. On the Twitch side of things, I would deal with a guy named Midnight Simon. I haven't seen him stream in a while, though. Midnight Simon, I think he's the same on YouTube as well, but I've followed him for years. He grinds out leak code. He works, I think he might have taken a layoff package, so I'm not sure that he still works there anymore, but he works in Mang, right? So he was at one of the Fang or Mang, whatever you want to call them. I know they've changed to Mang, but he wasn't at any of the ones that changed. He was in the G, but I'm pretty sure he took a layoff package though. But he was doing really well over there. He just grinds leak code and his stuff. So anyways, his name's Midnight Simon. You can look him up if you wanted. Yeah, Quartz, for us to make a server tag, we would have to get 2 more boosts. And you say, why don't you just boost the server yourself? I could, but like there's some Google permission thing that I just don't even want to mess with, so I haven't done it. So Quartz, I think we have like 7 boosts. The question was, why don't we have a server tag for like ProLUG? One, I like to see who's not loyal to us and uses other server tags. That's one reason. And I'm just kidding. I don't give a shit if people wear other people's colors. And 2, yeah, I was waiting to see if we ever get, because we have like 7 boosts, but we had already applied them. And one of the things, like I could boost the server and get that server tag now, but we wouldn't be able to do, there's a thing called, there's a bandwidth thing that we wouldn't have anymore. And there's like an amount of size of file thing that we wouldn't be able to do anymore. So I've just kind of left it like it is, Quartz. But also, yeah, I like to see who's tagging other servers and bringing their crap around us. Nah, just kidding. I don't care. Like, I feel like in the big scheme of things, there's plenty of internet for everybody, right? Like, there's plenty of people that want to hang out here, and if I tell people all the time, if it's not us, find somebody, man. Like, I'd rather you go and have a happy career doing pre-sales engineering, something that I legitimately could not help you learn that. I did DECA in high school, and I was pretty good at vehicle and petroleum marketing. I won state in Arizona. I took 3rd in 98, and I took 1st in 99. And I went to nationals and got wrecked both years. But again, I say all that to say, like, it doesn't, like, I don't even know why I was saying that. Oh yeah, there's plenty of internet for everybody. I can't teach you some of those. I can't teach you all those algorithms. I know them at like a high level, but putting them into like software practice, I do not know that at all. I am not a software engineer in that sense, not even a little. Could I like get something running for people and like move data in and out of a database? That stuff, yes. But other stuff like productionalizing it, that's not what I do, right? I'm like that guy. We don't do that here, right? That's me. Anyways, yeah, I don't have any other good ones for you on that. But review is continuing education, so learn how you learn. Find out how you're best going to study and what's the most effective way of doing things, and do that. Get feedback from people. Find yourself a mentor, right? We have a lot of people in Discord that are helping out other people that are, we have a lot of people that are kind of on that cusp trying to get into the work, and they've got resumes and they've got interviews out there, and they feel like they're not getting good traction in their interviews. We've got a few guys that run stuff on the weekends sometimes to help people get ready for that. Get feedback from somebody. Listen to other people when they talk about this stuff. Then I say go study the body of knowledge that surrounds something so that you're ready to talk about that thing in a professional manner, right? Build a home lab if you need to. Again, you don't have to spend any money. You could just use a lot of online resources for a long time here for free. Get a book collection. You might spend some money. You could also go find everything on Reddit. There's literally every book that's ever been turned into a PDF somewhere on the internet. But I like to feel like, hey, I'm tossing $20 to it's partially a fundraiser, it's partially the, whatever. That feels good to me. Better than maybe when I was younger, when I would have just went and pirated everything, right? Then find an industry discussion group, podcasts, blogs, open source community. Find people that are interested in the same things as you and join the community and figure out where you can help. There's a lot of Slack and Discord servers. There's search functions for that. I don't know all of them, right? Like, I don't know all that. And then if you just find yourself as the expert, you should just start mentoring others, right? That's kind of the thing. Start writing your notes down, codifying things that you do into whatever best practice you have. Let's see if we can find, is Sending Grounds hopping on? I don't see Sending Grounds yet. All right. I was hoping he'd be on so we could go hop over to him. All right. So anyways, questions, I always say email me, but also just find me over here on Discord. Again, the events that are coming up, we got the Bash study group. We got the professional pen tester coming out on Saturday. That's at 3. Yeah, that's after I got an event I got to do on Saturday before that. Late night Bash study. I started that, but I'm not always going to run that. Somebody else will probably take that over. But we had people talking in there until about 1 a.m. my time. So that's a pretty good time for people on the other side of the world. We probably had 15 people in there this weekend. So that got to be pretty big. We do maintenance on Sunday nights in the lab. I sometimes stream it and sometimes we just do it in Discord. But when I do it in Discord, you guys can talk to me. You can ask me questions about what I'm doing. We can work through things and that kind of stuff. And then the security engineering course is coming up again. That is free on our Discord. The one thing that gets people on this is it's free, right? It's only going to take about 8 to 10 hours of your time each week to do it. But one thing that has stopped people, I think, from doing it is you have to do our discussion questions. Like if you're doing it with us and you want to get our cool little certification that we give out, we give a cool little cert to people that finish it. You have to do the discussion post. That's a non-negotiable. And then the automation course is starting. What's this question? Do you ever take any radio spectroscopy in university? Did you like it? Yeah, I did quite a lot of signal engineering, sending signals typically. Yeah, so I guess if you're talking was I running, so at DeVry we had electronics labs that were just the analog and then the digital oscilloscopes. And then I built a little modem on a breadboard. I'm not even an electrical engineer, guys. That's not what I do, but I had to build one of those. Modulate a signal, demodulate it back on the other side. So yeah, I've done that. I've never done anything commercial. No. No, not in that kind of stuff. I mean, I've set up. I did a lot of wireless site survey stuff early on in my career, but most of that was just I had some wireless strength, and then a laptop walking around with back then it was not air snarf. It was and it wasn't air snort. It was called something pig. But it was there was open source tools that I used back then, and I could just see how far my signal was going and see where my interference areas were. Nowadays, guys, it's way more modern. Like I'm talking early 2000s when I was doing those types of things, and I did them for a school district, so I would do them in their big campuses. But nowadays, like you just have like a Cisco wireless manager, and then you go drop all your access points, and it just tells you everything. So, oh, you said commercial. Sorry, I'm sorry, Kung Pao. I was answering your question that I had not done it commercially, like in an enterprise, but I've definitely done radio stuff. Um, I've done radio like signal engineering, but never like in an enterprise level. No, I did it for a school district for a while, wireless site surveys and building out all the wireless programs and stuff. But that was, like '04 to '06, so that was 20 plus years ago now, when I was doing that stuff. Man, career goes by quickly, guys. Goes by quick. And somewhere in there, I decided I didn't love networking, and I went full time. I do all Linux, right? Linux, security, that kind of stuff. I do not do a lot of networking now. I still program devices when people need me to, but for the most part, unless the very specific thing calls for it, I do not touch networking too often. So, the cat with a rotisserie. Is that on there right there? I don't even know. I don't even know what risky click of the day is going on in our Discord. But all right, here's what we're gonna do, guys. I'm gonna end stream here. I appreciate you guys all coming by. Let's go find somebody